85,000 fans have demanded Netflix fire Witcher writers. I think it should be 85 million. Let's find out what's going on.
To keep on doing it. It's also important to know that...
By the way, this video is made by Legacy Killer HD. Go like and subscribe.
If you realize you're doing the wrong thing, that's when you stop doing the wrong thing. You don't just keep on going just because that leads down a dark path.
That's true.
Those specific remarks coming from Henry Cavill came just a couple of days before the...
Henry what?
Those specific remarks coming from Henry Cavill came...
Henry Cavill? What? It's Henry Cavill! Not a fan! Legacy Killer HD, I see Henry Cavill. I need to hear that. That's, oh my goodness gracious me.
Those specific remarks coming from Henry Cavill came just a couple of days before the bombshell shocking announcement that he was leaving The Witcher, and Liam Hemsworth, an actor known for his roles years ago in The Hunger Games and Independence Day, would be taking over.
No disrespect meant. There has never been a more B-grade actor face than Liam Hemsworth. That's what you're born with. There's nothing you can do about it. Maybe if he shaved off the beard and just kept the mustache, he could look like an A-list celebrity, A-list movie star, but he just doesn't look like it. He looks like knockoff, what's his name? Chris Hemsworth. That's what he looks like. He's his brother. He's not. That's what he looks like. You are the knockoff version. And yes, your eyes are pretty. Don't stop looking at me. No more. You are not my Witcher.
Geralt of Rivia in Season 4 of The Witcher. A major downgrade in my personal opinion, as everybody has been pointing out over the last couple of days that Henry Cavill was really carrying that show.
I can't get past the fact he's saying Henry Cavill. Cavill?
Especially in Season 2, in which a lot of fans were extremely unhappy with the direction that the showrunners took, and it seems like Henry Cavill himself was very upset. Regardless, there's a number of updates on this situation that we're going to be discussing today, because it is...
I forgot how good this game looks. I really did.
Become clear in the last couple of days that Cavill getting his Superman role back isn't really necessarily the problem with why he's not going to be playing Geralt of Rivia anymore. It's more to do with the showrunners. We discussed this in my last video, but one of the former writers and producers on the Witcher Netflix show exposed that there are writers behind the scene that genuinely do not like the games and books and openly mock it behind the scenes. And
I think I said this last stream. I am absolutely amazed that there are people that have the balls to take someone else's original work, original universe, original characters, all of that, and then they go, yeah, I can do this better. We've seen it done with World of Warcraft, the movie. We've seen it done with, oh my God, what's another one that did it? There's so many examples, my head's went completely blank. There's been, I guess there are things that go the other way, like every single Spider-Man is that every single time Spider-Man restarts, every single time Batman restarts, we have to watch the exact same thing again, and it is boring. So, but what I'm trying to say is to have the balls to look at someone else's work and then say that you can write it better than they wrote it is insane to me. It's absolutely just shocking. And oh my God, if I wrote a book and someone else came along and said, yeah, I can write this better, I think I'd slap them into space. Into space!
And that might have just been the straw that broke the camel's back, because it really does seem like Cavill, a major gaming nerd, somebody who's passionate about these franchises, he wants people being faithful. He wants the people that are involved in these shows to be faithful to the source material, the stuff.
Yeah, but he also wants the writers and the directors or directors, depending on whether or not they keep the same director between multiple episodes. Some shows do, some shows don't. He wants them to stay, what's the word that I was just using? Faithful to the source material, because he genuinely loves the source material. Like, if I was, here's a good example. And a good example says so by me. If I was going to make a new Power Rangers movie, I would argue that I could scrap the source material. Because, let's be real, Power Rangers was really cool. But the storylines always sucked. It was always boring. It was always the Megazord at the end. We knew the Megazord was coming. Who cares? You know? Like, start the movie with the Megazord. And the Power Rangers have been at it for like 10 years. And you start the movie with them losing. It's 20 years in the future. The aliens control the Earth. And they've been gathering the bits of the Megazord for like 20 years. See what I'm saying? Like, that's a storyline. That's a story that you could... I'm not saying that's good. I'm saying that's a story that you could mess with. But this is a full-fledged book, a 3-game series, a devoted fan base, and you come in and you go... And yes, Underman, Halo. Halo could learn from this. The Halo show was some of the worst shit that I have ever had grace my TV screen. I'm not a Halo fan. I don't like the Halo games. I hate games that have bullet sponge enemies. If I shoot you in the face, you're dead. That's it. I'm not going to shoot you 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, 25 times, and you're still alive. No. If I shoot you in the face once, you're dead. That's how it works. I grew up on PlayStation 1. I shot people in the head and siphon filter, and they died immediately, and that was that. Okay? So I wasn't a fan of Halo, but I knew enough about the universe to be interested in the show. And at the end of every episode, I would message my cousin, who is a big Halo fan, or every other episode. And I would just go, dude, I'm not looking forward to finding out what you think of this one, because oh my God, some of the stuff they did in that show was... what's the word? Sacrilege? It was genuinely shocking. Again, another show where the writers think that they can write a better storyline than the writers of the game who already have a successful series and a devoted fan base. It's crazy.
That they're working on. That's why he even wanted to get involved in this project from the get-go, because he loves this franchise. He loves the books. He loves the games. But unfortunately...
wasn't he the one that was pushing for this to be made for so long? Wasn't The Witcher made into a show because of him, or am I completely wrong there?
The people that are involved in the show just don't have that same love. And Redanian Intelligence, which is a major source for news on The Witcher, they've had a bunch of exclusives over the last couple of years. Well, they also had a new report that just sheds some more light on this current ordeal, and it makes it very, very clear that Henry Cavill's dissatisfaction with the direction that the show has been taking isn't something that's recent. Back in September of 2021, according to Redanian Intelligence...
I've still not seen season 2. Now, I have a very fair reason I've not seen season 2 yet. I want to wait for Black Friday to get a nice new big TV rather than watching it on the garbage current TV I have. That's the reason. I want to fully enjoy it on an OLED TV. This is my dream. And I'm going to make my dream happen. I'm going to make it happen, dude. But that's why I've not seen season 2. Season 1, now, I'm going to be completely biased here. I'm a huge Witcher fan. One of my earliest memories is playing through Witcher 1 on PC. And my PC at the time could barely handle it. I think I played it like 720p, if even that. But I loved it. I've played through The Witcher 1 maybe 4 times. 3 complete playthroughs. Maybe 1 to 3 non-complete playthroughs. I absolutely love it. Played through The Witcher 2 once. Loved it. Played The Witcher 3, put 60 to 80 hours in. Never completed it, but plan to go back and play through the entire series one last time and then complete Witcher 3. I love the Witcher series. I've never read the books, but I deeply love the games. And if you've seen The Witcher 1, you know, you look at the gameplay from that and you go, you love this? I do. I love the story, although it's not as memorable a story I love the gameplay. I love the decisions, the world, the enemies, the combat. I love all of it. Witcher fan for a very, very, very long time. I was very upset when Henry Cavill was cast as Geralt of Rivia. I didn't think he could do it. I wanted to see an actor that wasn't really big play Geralt of Rivia. Reason being is that I was worried that when I saw Henry Cavill as the Witcher, I just go, cool, there's Superman. Cool, there's Henry Cavill. More so, there's Superman with grey hair. And he so pulled it off beyond every single doubt that I had. It was incredible. It's gutting to hear that he's not going to be back. I hope, here's what I really hope. Oh, we'll talk about what I really hope happens at the end.
Sources, when The Witcher Season 2 was in post-production and Season 3 had not been renewed yet, we heard from a source that recasting Geralt was a growing possibility at Netflix. The reason for that was that Henry Cavill was considering leaving the series after Season 2 because he and the...
Can I just check the comments? Is anyone saying... No one is saying that he got Cavill wrong? No one. Am I wrong? Look, this person's even written, I love Henry Cavill's take on this. It is Henry Cavill. Am I losing it? Am I the crazy one? Hold on just a second. Just a second. How to pronounce Henry Cavill? Am I losing it? Is this going to be a robot? Oh.
Cavill is pronounced like travel. Travel. Cavill.
You see, I'm not crazy. I knew it. It's not Cavill, it's Cavill. Frau.
Producers weren't seeing eye to eye regarding content in Geralt's role in The Witcher. At the time, we believed Henry wasn't 100% serious about it. It would not really go through with leaving the series since he fought so hard to get that role. So instead of reporting on it, we chose to sit on the information and see where it goes. And then The Hollywood Reporter in September 2021 said that Cavill had just renewed his contract and would be getting $1 million per episode for season 3, as opposed to $400,000, his earlier The Witcher salary.
He was only getting 400 grand per episode. Trust me, I hear myself when I go, only 400 grand. But I would have thought that The Witcher was one of Netflix's biggest shows. Not only that, but it's Henry Cavill. He must have taken like a massive pay cut for what he is actually worth. Well, I guess he's actually worth $1 million an episode. But he took 400 grand an episode in order to make sure the show was made. Fair enough. But, I still can't believe that.
So that was apparently what was happening during season 2. But there's also a number of quotes from season 2 on the promotional tour in which Cavill may have spilled the beans. Either that's accidentally or on purpose, you decide. So in December of 2021, Henry Cavill said that he was absolutely committed to the Witcher 7-season plan on one condition. The 7-season plan is something that the Witcher showrunner Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich announced back in 2019. That was her vision for the show. And Cavill said this just about, 10 or so months ago. He said that his one and only condition was that they must continue to tell great stories while also honoring author Andrzej Sapkowski's work. But the showrunner Lauren Hissrich around this same time...
It's so crazy to me that there's a direct quote. I've heard this quote before as well, where he says, I am committed to doing the full 7 seasons so long as we stick to what the original writer wrote. If that was such a, hey, by the way, just so I'm going to let everybody know that if I leave, it's because of you for no other reason. Such a baller move, man. I love it.
In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, hinted that she and Cavill clashed over the show's portrayal of Geralt in numerous instances. She said,
for real, why do you think that you know the character better? Now, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm being serious. I know that Henry Cavill thinks that he knows the character better because he's played all the games, he's read all the books, and I haven't read the books. I love the games, I love the story and universe. I haven't read the books. I haven't got patience for that. He read the books. Who reads books in 2022? Many people. We use Kindles now. But he read the books, played all the games, and is a huge nerd. This is a guy that almost missed the casting for what? Superman? Because he was raiding in a World of Warcraft session?
Geralt in numerous instances.
Why do you think that you know more about this character?
He said a lot of the notes he was sending to me were about Geralt's dialogue. Could he, first of all, say more? Everybody came out of season 1 laughing and loving Geralt's fuming, but Henry was saying that when you read the books, you spend a lot of time in Geralt's head, so how can we put that on the page?
Well, that's totally
and she
fair.
Additionally, in another interview, talked
That's fair. That's fair. So, Henry Cavill was trying to figure out. See, I guess what he's trying to say is that, or my interpretation of what's being said there is that a lot of the world is told directly through Geralt of Rivia's inner monologue or inner thoughts. How do we get that onto the page? Rather than, that's one of the issues that you get when you translate a book into a movie or a show. There's two main issues there. One is that you go from an author writing, it was a dark and gloomy morning. The dew was resting atop the leaves from a night prior. Dead mice littered the field, the prey of owls. To just a shot of that for 2 seconds. And then you're on to the next shot. And the problem with that is you lose a lot of the immersion in that scene, and you put all the emphasis of the world on the actual words that the character's saying, obviously. But the problem when you do that is that you lose the ability to understand the world from the character's point of view. So what they normally do is they wedge in side characters, they wedge in a love interest to give you a different way of understanding the world from that character's perspective, rather than, the main character having a love of where he's from. He grew up in these mountains. He loves this tree, which is on his walk every morning. And, the author takes time to describe it. This tree was a beautiful oak tree that had been there since his father's father had planted it. It meant the world to him. It was where he'd had his first kiss. It was where he'd had his first fight. It was where he hoped to one day marry his future wife, a woman who he'd never met but had interest in a couple in the town. But this tree meant the world for him. It was where he'd made his first swing, and he would spend every single evening watching the sunset from this tree. And rather than having the character have a love for the world and you understanding it through the author's writing, what they'll do is they'll go, oh, actually, there's a girl in town. Boys like girls, and boys in real life like girls. So when this boy likes this girl in the show, they'll understand that. So he loves the girl who lives in the town rather than the town itself. They'll do the easy thing, the super easy thing, which is just to do that. Wedge in a love interest, wedge in a friend, wedge in a side character, So I get what he's saying here. He's saying that, look, we want to see the world from his point of view. How do we get his words out? How do we get his inner monologue out, At least that's my interpretation.
How can we put that on the page? And she additionally, in another interview, talked about a specific instance in which there were some disagreements. Hissrich admitted that when she first wrote the Witcher Roach death scene in Season 2, her instinct was to puncture the moment with a...
Well, I didn't know that happened. Well, shit.
A bit of meta-comedy. Jesus.
Yo,
Anyway,
I heard about this!
Puncture the moment with a bit of meta-comedy. Jesus. Anyway, Henry Cavill obviously pushed for a more heartfelt moment, and eventually Hissrich caved, which she says she ultimately made the right call. Henry was so unhappy with the line, finally I said, you know what, you come up with something. I trust you. You know this material so well. You know the book so well. You don't even have to pitch it to me. And he came...
I don't think... The way that that's worded, I don't believe that that's what she actually said. I believe she said, you know what, you come up with something. But this whole second part sounds made up to me. You know what? You come up with something. I trust you. dude, hold on. What if she did say all of that and was finally I said, you know what? You come up with something. I trust you. You know the material so well. You know the book so well. You don't even have to pitch it to me. Like, that's what that sounds like. That doesn't sound like the way I would word something to someone I'm working with who's unhappy with something that we've been working on together. You know? That's it shouldn't have even come to her saying that. It should have been like, okay, let's try your thing and we'll try my thing. That's a end of the, like, you know what? Do what you want. That's not a, let's work this out, let's work together here. That doesn't sound like that whatsoever.
Came back the next day with a beautiful speech that's...
I am reading into this heavily because I really like Henry Cavill. I really like The Witcher. And I'm really, like, not happy knowing that even if the show sucked, I'd be unhappy knowing that someone that was so passionate about what they were doing isn't no longer able to pursue it because of conflicts with people that didn't know what they were doing. You know what I mean?
It's at the end of Sword of Destiny when Geralt is facing death, and it's such a pitch-perfect moment. And again, just the fact that the Witcher Encyclopedia, that is something that his co-stars on The Witcher have referred to as knowledge and passion of the franchise. The fact that that person, the leading figure behind the Witcher series, is now leaving is just devastating. And I really don't know how this show is going to continue. But it goes further than just this, because again, in December of 2021 on this tour, Cavill made additional remarks. In an interview with Hardware Zone, he was asked, stepping into the shoes of Geralt again for Season 2, what has changed about how you prepare for the role compared to Season 1? Cavill answered, as far as the preparation goes, coming into this, I wanted the character to have a closer relationship to the character in the books. I wanted him to be more book accurate. And so it was more to do with making sure and campaigning for him to sound more intellectual, more philosophical, and to have an emotional side as well, rather than...
I will say that I didn't fully get that vibe from the character in the games. The vibe I got from Geralt in the games was someone who ultimately was a good person, but I don't know, how do I actually view Geralt from the games? Ultimately, I mean, you can play it whatever way you want, but he always came across to me as a naturally good person that had seen a lot of bad stuff in life and had kind of given up on people. Like, wasn't too interested in them anymore, didn't really care about them, but couldn't help but help people because he had the ability to. And then the part of the game where you came in was, do you want to get paid for what you're doing or not? That's where your choice comes in. But helping people never really seemed like much of a choice because of the person that he was. So if you're saying you wanted him more intellectual, he definitely was intellectual in the games, for sure. Philosophical? Yes, actually. Emotional? I mean, the entire third game he's trying to help. What's her face? I've forgotten it, but yeah.
Than just being a grumpy snowman.
Yeah,
Every
that's not
day
what
I
he's
was
supposed to
pushing
be.
this stuff as far as prep goes. And next, in an interview with The Star, he said, the toughest part for me was finding that balance between the showrunner's vision and my love for the books and trying to bring that Geralt to the showrunner's vision. It's about treading a fine line there. It's the showrunner's story, and so it's an adaptation. The tricky part for me was finding Geralt from the books' place within that and being able to serve both as much as I could.
I think it's going to be really difficult for me to really take Henry Cavill's side 100% because I don't know Geralt from the books. I'm going to have to read the books just to know, really. I don't even know how many books there are, but yeah, it's difficult to say, yeah, he's totally right, because I don't know whether or not the character of Geralt from the books would translate over. The character of Geralt from the games obviously would transfer over into shows and movies, because it worked in game format, which is not that far off shows and movies. I wish the actors of The Rings of Power did this from the start. I've heard Rings of Power is not good. That's all I've really heard about that. There's 5 or 6 books. Oh wait, game Geralt and book Geralt are pretty different, to be honest. I've read the books and played the games. They are different, but also the same. I see what you're saying. Yeah, they're different but the same. They're I mean, they're the same character, but I guess it's, well, it would be, there's also interpretation when you read a book, isn't there? There's the character, the world looks the way that you see it in your head, even though it's described by an author. It still looks the way that your head imagines it.
Things that I pushed
I see what
for,
you're saying,
it was
though.
not necessarily just more dialogue, it was bringing a more book-accurate Geralt to the screen. Because as I'm sure you know in the books, Geralt is an amateur philosopher, he's an intellectual, he's wise and thoughtful. Yes, he's at times morose, morbid, and snarky, but it's important for me to have the character be three-dimensional. He continued, and it's tricky to do so, as I was saying earlier, because there's a certain vision and there's a certain set storyline and plot, and so it was about me trying to find Geralt's place within that. All of my asks and requests were along the lines of just being faithful to the source material.
I feel like that's fair to just, he's not asking for his way, he's asking for the original author's way. That seems fair to me. I also side with Henry Cavill more, now that I think about it, because the woman, I can't remember her name, the showrunner, she wanted to put a funny line in when Roach died, which is just the stupidest idea ever. You don't underpin a serious moment with a joke unless it's a comedy or an action. You don't do it with, like, what I would say is just like a hybrid, a drama adventure action hybrid, you know?
And that ultimately is the big problem here and why Cavill is likely departing. He has other roles that he can spend time in, getting invested in, and when this show is departing so heavily from the source material, I know a lot of people are extremely pissed about Eskil being killed in season 2. He just doesn't see the reason
There's
to
another
continue.
spoiler. There's spoilers
And this
galore right now, man.
unhappiness isn't just coming from Cavill right now. A lot of the fans are absolutely pissed at these showrunners, especially with all of the recent events that have occurred. We had viral tweets such as this coming from @CursedHat. Henry Cavill leaving The Witcher after begging Netflix for the role and being the biggest fan of the franchise is making the report that the writers hate the books seem more and more plausible. They chase that man away from the series. This is sick. Now,
What I kind of hope happens, if I'm being real, I'm so annoyed at this man that Legacy Killer HD dropped 2 massive spoilers in the middle of this without putting a spoiler warning at any point and didn't even need to mention those 2 things. What was I going to say? I hope that Henry Cavill comes back and that the writers that he had an issue with are fired instead. Why do I hope that? Because these writers are going to be fired either way, because even if season 4 is made, no one's going to watch it and it's going to end after that. I really hope that he comes back. The writers and showrunners he had an issue with are gone. And then we can judge season 4 and a more accurate version as said by Cavill, as made by Cavill. We can judge whether or not that's good or bad then. But from the sounds of things, there have been decisions made during this show that I'm sure Henry Cavill didn't agree with that are not good.
another
dude.
user saying Henry Cavill quitting his literal dream role as The Witcher because smug Netflix writers refuse to respect the character or source material is the coolest crap ever. F these endless, soulless, faithless adaptations from showrunners who clearly hate the art that they're adapting.
But let's not forget who these writers are. These are people that can't get a job as an original writer because they either lack the ability to find that job, lack the experience, or lack the creativity, so they adapt other people's work. That's ultimately what they're doing. It could just be that they're unlucky and they've not been able to get their own works recognized yet. But there are definitely people within that field that are jealous that they have to adapt other people's work that are better than anything they'll ever be able to make. So they convince themselves that they can do it better, and then they don't. So these are the people that are making these adaptations. I think Game of Thrones is a great example of 2 guys that smelled way too many of their own farts and thought that they could make an ending in 8 episodes. And my God.
That is a widespread problem throughout this entertainment industry, whether that be on the big screen or the small screen. just seems like there's so many writers being brought in for these fantasy adaptations, and they just don't care at all, and they have to include their own changes just because they think something's funny. It doesn't have to make sense with the actual source material. It's just because they think it sounds good, and most of the time it ends up being an absolute disaster. You can look, the Rings of Power is a recent example, Wheel of Time, I think that was another one, and there are a number of other examples over the last couple of years that can be brought up. It truly is sad how so many franchises, beloved IP, have been massacred by Hollywood. And to be honest, it seems like the only examples of adaptations that have truly worked is when the actual book authors like George R.R. Martin are heavily involved in the adaptation.
True.
That just isn't something that happens very often, unfortunately, though.
Yeah.
Now, the support for Henry Cavill was mostly widespread, although we did see some outliers, some figures.
There were people disagreeing. If you haven't seen season 2, don't listen to the audiobooks. Season 1 was somewhat in the direction of the true story and books. Season 2 started out with some elements of the books. Okay, but eventually thrown out. Brilliant. Brilliant.
That targeted him for his departure and the support that he's right now getting. Frosk, a former G4 host, she's infamous for a viral clip in which she admonished their audience. But anyway, Frosk said Henry Cavill said some very questionable things around Me Too and dated a 19-year-old as 30 years plus. Seeing people throw themselves at his feet for The Witcher is weird. The show is whatever at best.
What a weird way out of left field take. What a bizarre take. First, it's not, you know what? It's not even worth talking about. It's such a stupid take. It's not even worth talking about.
And it's just a weird takedown of a man that the only questionable thing he said about Me Too was that I believe dating was tougher and he didn't really want to date during that era. Don't really see how that's controversial. And taking aim at a consensual relationship, that's also another odd one. And people really aren't throwing themselves at Cavill. They just see his passion, his knowledge of The Witcher, and they also see how the showrunners have butchered The Witcher, and they feel sad for the guy because he really wanted this to work, and now he's kind of being forced out because he doesn't want to spend the next couple of years on something that he can't fully get behind.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, if I think about all of Henry Cavill's roles and why I'm a massive fan of him, the answer is that I'm not a massive fan of Henry Cavill. The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head that he's been in, that I've seen, is Superman, and I thought that iteration of Superman was the most boring character I've ever seen in my life. Now, do I blame him for that? Or do I blame the director? Do I blame the story writer? I blame kind of a mix of both. It was a dark Superman in a dark world. There wasn't really much room, I don't think. You know, I blame the writer first, the director second, the actor third. That's the way that I blame things. I think that his iteration of Superman was so unbelievably boring and emotionless. But I think that because I grew up watching Lois and Clark, and I liked Lois and Clark, as stupid as it was on so many occasions, there was so much colour to that character. Now, to be fair, there was episode after episode after episode, but I'm getting away from myself. I am on Henry Cavill's side because I know that he was passionate, I know that he loved what he was doing, and he was great at it. That's why I'm on his side, simple. No other reason.
Obviously, once the Witcher Season 3 Netflix promotional tour begins in a number of months, he's not going to confirm any of the suspicions. He's probably only going to have glowing things to say about the showrunners and those involved. And that's
Wait, have they still to film Season 3? Ooh.
It's just because he is a nice guy. But his actions and his remarks that he's made in interviews about the behind-the-scenes activity with The Witcher tell a different story. Now, that specific tweet coming from that G4 host, as ridiculous as it is an outlier. It's an example of just a couple of people that have been taking aim at Cavill. Now, how big this has gotten in terms of his support will look no further than this change.org petition. Netflix, you must keep Henry Cavill as The Witcher and replace the writers instead. This is approaching on 75,000 signatures. And it says, Andrei Sapkowski himself said about Henry Cavill, I was more than happy with Cavill's appearance as The Witcher. He's a real professional, just as Viggo Mortensen gave his face to Aragorn. So Henry gave his to Geralt, and it shall be forever so.
For the original writer to compare Viggo Mortensen's portrayal of Aragorn to Henry Cavill playing Geralt of Rivia, that's how happy he was with his performance. I don't think the praise gets much higher than that. I really don't think it does. They even mixed up timeline events from the book. Why would they mix up oh, dude. I wonder if it could, with so many things, or with the few things that have been mixed up from the timeline in the books, in the show, I wonder how salvageable it is with the source material they have from making 7 seasons.
Well, not so, unfortunately. Henry isn't leaving The Witcher because of Superman. Netflix executives have once again made a grave decision against delivering for their fans. And the truth of the fact is that Superman has to play a factor in all of this. He's going to be making more money, and he gets to return to a role that he's actually happy with. And he's already been signed on to a bunch of other movies and such. And that's what this is about. Instead of dedicating the next half or so decade to something that he can't fully get behind, why not work on a bunch of other projects that he can? Now,
makes sense.
Change.org petition continues, saying that let us show them in pure numbers that none of us Witcher fans will stand with them and will abandon the show and potentially our subscriptions after The Witcher Season 3 is concluded. Netflix can only exist because of us all paying them monthly to produce content that is
this seems a little bit hoity-toity, but
entertaining. Unfortunately, all public info points towards a production team making decisions that are completely opposite of the fans' interests. We already had to suffer through the disaster that was the end of Game of Thrones. Netflix, don't repeat that exact same mistake of holding on to writers and showrunners that believe themselves to be superior to the actual creator of the stories that made them successful. And right now, this petition, again, has nearing about 75,000 signatures.
I wonder how many signatures it's got now. Let's find out. This petition now has 165,000 signatures. Oh my God.
Some of the top remarks being that the fact that the writers aren't fans of
this video was posted 3 days ago. The number has doubled in 3 days.
The original work should have been an issue at the beginning. People don't want some idiot adaptation. We want The Witcher. The writers suck. Henry Cavill is Geralt. The writers should be fans of the franchise they're writing content for. If they want to make their own show up, do that and stop being so selfish as to think you are more important than the damn franchise. Pathetic. And that is the overall sentiment with this current ordeal. We'll have to wait until some sort of statement comes from the showrunner, Lauren Schmidt Hissrich. Right now, she has been quiet about all of this. Obviously, there are some other Witcher projects in development. There's a family-friendly Witcher something supposed to be coming, and then obviously The Witcher Blood Origins, which is again a giant origin story. I believe that premieres in a couple of months. But yeah, this is bad for their biggest franchise, one of their biggest franchises, Netflix, just falling apart, as it's become clear that there's unhappiness with the direction that this show is taking from the leading actor, which will now be the former leading actor very, very soon. But anyway, what do you make of all of this chaos?
They should, by the way, before we continue, like and subscribe over at Legacy Killer HD. That was an incredible video. I really do hope that they just fire the writers that disagree or conflict or are in conflict with Henry Cavill. I am in disbelief. The show will not continue beyond season 4. I have zero interest. Here's the thing. When I say I have zero interest in watching Liam Hemsworth play Geralt of Rivia and that I won't watch season 4 of The Witcher, I mean it. Because when House of Cards, when the final season of that came out, and What's-His-Face wasn't in there anymore, rightfully so, I didn't watch it. I think they should have just cancelled the show rather than had that last season. I didn't watch it. I don't know a single person that watched it. I will not be watching season 4 of The Witcher for sure. Henry Cavill's Geralt of Rivia, and that's that. The same way that Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. If anyone else is cast as Wolverine, I'm not going to watch it. That's not Wolverine. If we get a new Iron Man at some point, that's not Iron Man. Alternate universe Iron Man or not, that's not him. I've zero interest in that. I really do. I'm not someone that would say, like, I hope you lose your job. But in this case, these people are going to lose their jobs anyway. It's just a case of them working for one more year and then moving on, or losing their job now so that other writers can be hired in their place to continue this job and they can get a paycheck. It is such an easy like situation to fix, assuming Henry Cavill was willing to come back. And I would assume he'd only come back if he got like producers credits or director's credits. I don't know. I really hope he does. Yeah. We'll see what happens, dudes. Like and subscribe.